Welcome, KSLU Law students, to this crucial explainer session. I'm your professor for today, and let's be absolutely clear right off the bat. If you're aiming for maximum marks on your family law paper, question 18 is a frequent, high-scoring target. A scattered approach is going to cost you dearly. So, this session, it's your foolproof, structured blueprint for completely nailing the question comparing Sunni and Shia rules of inheritance. All right, let's dive into this with absolute focus.
Here is your structural roadmap for the exam. 1. Introduction to inheritance. 2. The basic difference. 3. 7 key differences. 4. Crucial case laws. And 5. Concluding your answer.
Heading number 1. Introduction to inheritance.
Okay. I strictly command you to write a synopsis block at the very top of your KSLU answer booklet. Then, you're going to begin your answer by stating exactly this. Under Muslim law, the law of inheritance differs between Sunni and Shia schools. Both are based on the Quran, but they differ in principles and methods of distribution. You need to write this verbatim as your opening paragraph. Why? Because it establishes the unquestionable Quranic basis of the law right away, before you even begin to systematically dissect the differences in jurisprudence. Never ever skip the introduction. It's literally the bedrock of a solid 16-mark answer.
Heading number 2. The basic difference.
When you reach this specific point in your script, firmly draw a clear dividing line right down the center of your page. Sunni law follows the principle of representation and the residuary system. Shia law follows the principle of proximity, meaning nearness of blood. So the absolute crucial takeaway here is grasping that residuary system versus nearness of blood. You see, Sunni law heavily relies on passing leftover property down to a very specific class of residuary heirs. Conversely, Shia law operates on strict proximity. The near and blood strictly excludes the more remote. Grasping this core philosophical split is absolutely critical for your examination before you even start listing the detailed points.
Heading number 3, 7 key differences.
In your exam script, you absolutely must number these points clearly. Use bullet points. Please do not write in giant, unreadable paragraphs. Point 1. Principle of distribution. Sunni recognizes sharers, residuaries, and distant kindred. Shia, heirs divided into 3 classes, preference based on nearness of relation. Now, what's really fascinating about this framework is how it dictates the entire calculation. Sunni law rigidly relies on these specific named categories. First, the shares take their fixed Quranic fraction, then the residuaries take the rest. The Shia focus, however, is entirely on hierarchical classes of nearness. Class 1 must be completely exhausted before Class 2 gets a single rupee.
Point 2. Doctrine of Representation. Sunni, not recognized. Shia, recognized. Descendants inherit the share of a deceased parent. Listen to me very carefully, because this is a vital distinction. While we mentioned representation broadly earlier, in the strict, practical application of inheritance shares, Sunni law does not recognize the descendant stepping into the shoes of a predeceased parent. Shia law strictly does. I explicitly command you to underline this specific heading in your KSLU booklet. Seriously, it's a massive marks fetcher.
Point 3. Exclusion rules. Sunni, residuaries may exclude distant relatives. Shia, near relatives exclude more remote ones. This perfectly clarifies exactly how that Sunni residuary concept actively operates. A residuary in Sunni law can effectively sweep away the estate, pushing out distant kindred entirely. But in strict Shia proximity, a closer blood tie absolutely shuts the door on a further one, regardless of whether they're a traditional sharer or not.
Point 4. Treatment of females. Sunni, females generally get a half share of males. Shia, similar rule, but the classification differs. Now, while the half-share rule is practically similar across both schools of thought, meaning, a daughter takes half of what a son takes, the underlying legal classification strictly dictates the final distribution. Make sure you clearly note that the principle of the share is the exact same, but how the female heir is classed totally changes the mechanics of calculation.
Point 5. Grandchildren's rights. Sunni, grandchildren usually excluded by children. Shia, grandchildren may inherit by representation. I really want you to deliberately link this concept back to the doctrine of representation we just covered. Look, if a son is alive, under Sunni law, the grandson gets nothing. But under Shia law, if one son is dead, his children, the grandchildren, step right into his shoes and take his exact share. Showing your KSLU evaluator this deep interconnected understanding, that's what secures top-tier marks.
Point 6. Classes of heirs. Pay attention to this order. Column 1, Sunni. Order 1 goes to shares, Order 2 to residuaries, and 3 to distant kindred. Column 2, Shia. Order 1 is Class I, meaning parents and children. Order 2 is Class 2, grandparents and siblings, and Order 3 is Class 3, uncles, aunts, etc. I'm instructing you right now to manually recreate this exact, high-density academic table on your paper. Evaluators have hundreds of papers to check, right? Beautifully structured tables fetch heavy marks. Plus, it brilliantly illustrates the structural divide between the two schools at a single quick glance.
Point 7. Return, academically known as ROD. Sunni, return not given to certain heirs, like a husband or wife. Shia, return applies much more broadly. Actually, let me quickly define the academic term ROD for you. When shares are distributed and there's a residue left over, but no residuary heirs exist, the remaining property returns to the sharers. Now, I am explicitly warning the classroom, do not confuse these crucial return provisions during the stress of the exam. Sunni law restricts spouses from taking this return, whereas Shia law is significantly more expansive.
Heading number 4, Crucial Case Laws.
First case. And folks, this is the most critical juncture for a 16-mark question. I want you to write these citations in a separate bordered box on your script to immediately stand out. Abdul Qadir versus Salima. Recognize principles of Muslim personal law and its contractual nature. Let's do a mandatory deep dive here. The brief background facts of this landmark case involved a complex dispute over the restitution of conjugal rights and the payment of dower. The final ratio decidendi, the verdict delivered by Justice Mahmoud, fundamentally declared that under Muslim law, marriage is purely a civil contract, absolutely not a religious sacrament. The absolute relevance of citing this right here, it establishes the fundamental, contractual, and rule-bound nature of Muslim personal law, which forms the strict bedrock upon which these inheritance rights and fractional shares are mathematically calculated. Underline this case name. Put it in a box.
Second case, Muhammad Hanif v. State of Bihar. Highlighted differences in application of Muslim personal laws. Expanding on this, the brief facts here involved a major challenge to state legislation banning cow slaughter, which was argued under Article 25, Freedom of Religion. The Supreme Court's verdict held that the sacrifice of a cow on Bakrid was not an absolutely essential part of the religion. So, exactly why is this vital for this specific KSLU comparison question? Well, because it demonstrates the absolute relevance of how the state and the courts strictly interpret what is an essential binding tenet of Muslim personal law versus what's just a customary practice. When courts adjudicate complex Shia versus Sunni inheritance disputes, they rely precisely on this strict application of essential religious texts. Again, box this citation.
Heading number 5, Concluding your answer.
You must never, ever leave an answer hanging. A precise conclusion secures those final, crucial marks. Write this exact phrasing as your definitive final paragraph. Conclusion. Sunni and Shia laws differ mainly on principles of distribution and classification of heirs. Sunni law emphasizes residuary succession, while Shia law focuses on blood proximity and representation, leading to different inheritance outcomes. This phrasing neatly, professionally, and comprehensively ties together the pages of distinct inheritance outcomes you've just spent all this time analyzing.
I leave you with this final critical challenge. Have you memorized these exact headings and citations for your KSLU examination script? Please do not take this lightly. I strongly urge you to review this explainer session repeatedly until the structural blueprint, the differences, the tables, and the boxed case laws are completely, flawlessly mastered. Because if not, well, I look forward to seeing you again next semester in the supplementary exams. Secure your marks, students. Class dismissed.